Hi everyone. Okay, so the next program in chapter 3 is sorted names. The program wants us to write, the question wants us to write a program that's going to allow the user to enter 3 names, and the program should arrange those names in ascending order. So for example, if the user enters Charlie, Leslie, Andy, then the program should display or arrange them this way by saying, or from A to Z, it should arrange them from A to Z, Andy, Charlie, and Leslie. Okay, so there are a couple of ways to do this, but I'm going to do this the way that came to mind first. And there are ways to compare strings in Java. So basically, the way I'm going to do this is this. I'm going to say, if the first name is less than, there are ways to compare it, and we'll use methods to compare the strings. So please don't get confused there. But when I start doing it, or when we start doing it, we'll all see. But I'm going to say that if Andy is less than Charlie and at the same time less than Leslie, then start with Andy. Let Andy be the first name to display. So if that's the case, then the only 2 names left are going to be Charlie and Leslie. We are going to compare these 2 and say, if Charlie is less than Leslie, then let Charlie be the second name, followed by Leslie, which is the third name. Else, then let Leslie be the second name, followed by Charlie, which is going to be the third name. After doing that, everything I've said will only hold if Andy is less than both Charlie and Leslie. Then we're going to, if that's not the case, if this Andy is not less than Charlie and at the same time less than Leslie, we'll check on Charlie again and say, if Charlie is less than Andy and at the same time less than Leslie, then let Charlie be the first name. If Charlie is the first name then to display, then the only names left are going to be Andy and Leslie. So we compare these 2 names, Andy and Leslie, and say, if Andy is less than Leslie, then let Andy be the second name, followed by Leslie, which is going to be the third name. Else, then let Leslie be the second name, followed by Andy, which is going to be the third name. Okay. And the last scenario would be, if Andy is not less than both Charlie and Leslie, and if Charlie is not less than both Andy and Leslie, then we test on Leslie to say, if Leslie is less than both Andy and Charlie, then let Leslie be the first name. If Leslie becomes the first name, then the only 2 names left will be Andy and Charlie. So we compare Andy and Charlie and say, if Andy is less than Charlie, then let Andy become the second name, followed by Charlie, which is going to be the third name. Else, let Charlie be the second name, followed by Andy, which is going to be the third name. So I hope I didn't confuse you there, but let's start it, and hopefully you get the idea. But basically, that's the way I'm going to do it. So I'm going to create the class sorted names. I'm back to spacing the codes out, putting line breaks in there. So I'm going to create the main method. Okay, so since we're going to be accepting input, we need some kind of way to accept input. So I'm going to use a JOption pane for this one. The JOption pane for this one. I can use a scanner, but I'm using the JOption pane for this one. And to do that, we need to import it so this program can have access to it. So import javax.swing.joption pane. So now we can call the JOption pane's show input dialog to ask the user to enter the names, to basically accept input from the user. So it's going to be JOption pane.show input dialog, and I'm basically going to accept a parameter, which is going to be an argument, which is going to be a label that's going to display that's going to show or yeah, display to the user. So I'm going to type, please enter the first name. Sorry about the noise. It's the table I'm sitting on. Oops, sorry. Okay, so now that when we ask this, it's going to return what the user is going to type. It's going to pop up a text box and return what the user is going to type. So we need to receive it. We need a variable to store the return value in, and that's going to be a string. So I'm going to create another variable, a variable, and call it first name. Or I'm just going to say name1. Oops, small letters, name1. And I'm going to store name1 here. So name1 is going to be this one. I'm going to go ahead and copy this whole line, repeat it twice, create two more variables, call the second one name2 and call the other one name3. Change these variable names so they can all store their respective inputs, and then change these labels to display the right question. So please enter name1. Let's say name1. Please enter name2, and please enter name3. So by this point, we're going to have all the names stored in the variable. So now we can go ahead and compare them. Okay, so this is where the comparison comes into play. So I'm going to create my if block here and say this: if the first name, if name1, this is a way to compare. If name1 dot compare to, so it's going to compare to is a method which is going to take in the second string that's going to be compared with the first string, which is name1. The second string is going to be received in here as an argument, and it's going to be compared with name1. I'm going to add one more. So it's name1 dot compare to ignore case. So ignore the case. Ignore the case of the string I'm going to pass in here as an argument. Just compare it with this one and see which one is less. Okay, and see which one is less. So name1 that compared to name2. Here, let me just space this out so it doesn't get confusing. So if name1 dot compare to ignore case name2, that meaning, one second. Yeah. So basically, this means that when you compare these two names, if name1 is less than name2, and we do that by saying, it's less than 0. All right. Sorry about the confusion. So basically, this is saying that if name1 is less than name2, if you compare these two and it gives you a negative number, any number less than 0, then that means that name1 is less than name2. So that's what it means. So if you are comparing name1 and name2 and ignoring the case, if this whole Boolean expression gives you a true value, which is a negative value, I don't want to confuse you. Basically, all what this is saying is, if you compare name1 to name2 and it gives you a negative value, then that means that name1 is less than name2. So that's all it's saying. So if name1 dot compared to ignore case name2 is less than 0, and at the same time, so I'm going to use the logical operator AND. That means that both have to be true. Both Boolean expressions, both sides of the whole expression have to be true in order for this whole Boolean expression to be true. So if name1 dot compare to ignore case name2 is less than 0, and at the same time name1 dot compare to ignore case name 3. We're comparing name 1, name 2, and name 1, name 3. We are checking to see if they're all less than 0. So so basically what this whole thing is saying is, if name 1 is less than name 2 and at the same time less than name 3, then let's start displaying the first name. Let's name 1 come first, or be displayed first. To do this, I'm just going to concatenate the names to a string I'm going to declare here. I'm going to create a string and I'll call it output. I'm just going to call it output. Right. I'm going to call it output. Let me just put it up here so it just becomes a bit organized. So if that's the case, then I'm going to declare this output to be an empty string, to be nothing. So if name 1 is less than name 2 and at the same time less than name 3, then add the first name to that string. Just add it there to that string. So output concatenated equals. That means that means what I'm concatenating to output is going to be name 1. Okay. Now, if that's the case, if I've been able to, if name 1 is the first name that's going to be displayed, then the only two options are name 2 and name 3. So in that case, I'm going to open and create another if clause and say if name 2 dot compare to ignore case name 3, and at the same time name 2, I'm sorry, let me see. No, we don't have to do that. Since we only have, I'm sorry, I was thinking about this. Okay, so if this is the first name, then the only options we have are name 2 and name 3. One has to be second, one has to be third. So if name 2 that compared to ignore case is less than 0, that means if name 2 is less than name 3, then add the second string. I'll add a second name to the output string. Okay, add a second name to the output string. So if that's the case, if name 2 is less than name 3, then output string add name 2 to it. Else, then that means that name 2 is not less than name 3. So in that case, name 3 is less than name 2. So in that case, name 3 has to come first. So let's put an else. Before name 3. 1 second. There's one more thing I'm missing. So if name 2 is less than name 3, then add the second name to the output string, and then go ahead and add the third name. I hope I'm not confusing you. Else, that means the third name is rather less than the second name. So add the third name to the string output string before you add the second name to the name string, to the output string. So let me just explain this so it doesn't seem confusing. Basically, all what this is saying is if name 1 is less than name 2, see, less than 0 means if name 1, if when you compare name 1 and name 2, if this whole result gives you a negative number, then that means name 1 is less than name 2. So if name 1 is less than name 2, and at the same time name 1 is less than name 3, then add this name 1 to the string. Let's concatenate it to the string. So that means when we are displaying the string, name 1 is going to appear first, because we've been able to prove that name 1 is less than both name 2 and name 3. If we are saying name 1 is less than both name 2 and name 3, if it's true that name 1 is less than both name 2 and name 3, then the only names who are basically competing for second and third place is name 2 and name 3. So we're going to compare name 2 and name 3 to see which one is less than the other. So we're going to say if name 2 is less than name 3, then the second name the second name you're going to concatenate to the output string is name 2. Then if name 2 is going to be the second name, then the only place for the third name is going to be the third name when it's organized. So the only place for name 3 is going to be the third place. I hope you get it. If not, then name 3 is less than name 2. So name 3 is going to be the second name displayed on the list, and then name 2 is going to be the third place on the list. I hope I explained it well. Okay. If you have any questions, please comment, and I'll try to be clear. So this is going to follow for all of them. This whole case is when name 1 is less than both name 2 and name 3. So if name 1 is not less than both name 2 and name 3, then we're going to create another condition to test to see if name 2 is less than both name 1 and name 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and copy this whole block, because it's going to be the same thing here, and I'll change the values. Okay. So I feel I didn't explain this part well. So I know that it might be annoying, and maybe you might not like it, but let me explain it one more time. This time I'll try to go slow a bit and try to be more clear, so that it makes sense before we even continue this. So I'll go ahead and I'll undo this. All right, and I'll bring it back. So basically, this is what we are doing. We are saying this, that if name 1 is less than name 2, and at the same time name 1 is less than name 3, then the first name that's going to go on the list is going to be name 1. We are concatenating that name to the output string. So when we display that name 1 is going to be the first name. We are arranging that name 1. That's going to go first. If it goes first on the list, then there are only 2 names that are going to be displayed on this second and third. So in that case, let's find out which one goes second, which one goes third. And the only names we have left is name 2 and name 3, because we've only arranged name 1. We've only found out that this is the name that goes first. So in that case, we compare these two and say if name 2 is less than name 3, then if that's true, then that means name 2 is a name that goes next on the list. So we are concatenating it to the output string. That's going to be number 2 on the list. And then if it's number 2 on the list, then the only place for name 3 to go is going to be number 3 on the list. So we are concatenating name 2 first, and then concatenating name 3. That is when name 2 is less than name 3. If name 2 is not less than name 3, that's where the else comes in. If name 2 is not less than name 3, then that means that name 3 is less than name 2. So in that case, name 3 is going to be the second name on the list. So we are concatenating that to the list. And then name 2 is going to go third on the list. So I hope it's a bit clear. Okay, so this will apply only if name 1 is less than name 2 and at the same time less than name 3. Okay, if name 1 is less than name 2 and at the same time less than name 3. If that's not the case, so I'm going to now bring back what I did. Else, if that's not the case, then the next thing we're going to do is if name 2 is less than name 1 and at the same time less than name 3. So that's what we're going to do next. So if name 2 compared with name 1 is less than 0 and at the same time name 2 compared with name 3 is less than 0, then that means that name 2 goes first on the list. If name 2 goes first in the list, the only names we have left is name 1 and name 3. So we compare those two. So if name 1 compared with name 3 is less than 0, then that means name 1 is the next name on the list, and then name 3 is the next name on that list. Else, that means that name 3 is less than name 1. So name 3 is next on that list, and name 1 is next on the list. This will only apply when name 2 is less than both name 1 and name 3. See, this will only apply, all this will only apply when name 2 compared with name 1 is negative. That means name 2 is less than name 1. And at the same time, name 2 is less than name 3. This will only apply. So if name 1 is not, let's start from the top. If name 1 is not less than name 2, and at the same time not less than name 3, and name 2 is not less than name 1, and at the same time not less than name 3, then we're going to compare the last one and say if name 3 is less than name 2 and at the same time less than name 1. That's going to be the last comparison. Once we do that, we've covered everything. We've covered all the comparisons, so we can successfully arrange it. All right, so let me just go ahead and copy all of this else. Here, let me see where it said. Yep, let's copy the whole of this else if. So else if name 3 is less than name 2 and at the same time less than name 1. So if name 3 compared with name 2 is negative, that means if name 3 is less than name 2 and at the same time name 3 is less than name 1, then the first name that goes on the list is name 3. If the first name that goes on the list is name 3, then the only two names left are name 2 and name 1. So we need to compare those two to see which one goes second and which one goes third. So if name 2 compared with name 1 is less than 0, meaning if name 2 is less than name 1, then that means name 2, let's see, 1 second. Yeah, so if name 2 is less than name 1, then that means that the second name on the list is going to be name 2 followed by name 1. We are concatenating these to the string. So if name 2 is not less than name 1, then that means name 1 is less than name 2. So in that case, if that's the case, if this is not the case, and the case is that name 1 is less than name 2, then name 1 goes second on the list, and then name 2 goes third on the list. So now we are done. We are done comparing all three. It's going to check all three to figure out which one goes first, which one goes second, which one goes third. All right, so if it's arranging this, definitely there'll be one name that's going to be less. It's going to be the lesser of all three. It's going to be the lesser of all these names. If it's name 1, then this is going to hold, and it's going to basically calculate it's arrange the rest. If name 2 is the lesser of all these names, then this is going to hold. All this is going to hold. If name 3 is the lesser of all the three names, then this block is going to run. And any block that runs will basically have names rearranged. It will have the names concatenated to the output string here, and we can display it nicely. So once we are done here, we need to display it, right? So since we use the JOption pane, we are going to use the JOption pane's show message dialog to display it. So JOption pane dot show message dialog, and this is going to receive two arguments. The first one is null, which is basically going to display the window in the center of the screen. Normally we change this when you're working with a program that has multiple windows, But for now, we're going to keep it at null, so it centers it in the screen. The next thing is going to be the message you want to display. So the message I want to display is going to be our output string that we've formed. We've concatenated the names to that output string, so we want to display that. It's going to be a problem. I think the names are going to be jammed together without any space or line break, so we'll fix that. But first, let's run it. Anytime you use the G pane, you need to call the system.exit so that it terminates the extra thread that's started by the G pane. 0 is just passed into this, so that if the user wants to receive the return value of this method, to test on it to see whether it's 0 or whether it's a different number, they can, and they can determine whether the program runs successfully or not. If they receive the return value of this method and it's 0, then that means that this program was able to reach this line, and that means the program runs successfully. That's a way to test to see if the program runs successfully. So you need to do this to cause or to terminate that extra thread that's caused by the G pane. All right, so now we are done. So I'm going to go ahead and compile it. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it sorted names. And just make this small letter. Okay, I'm going to compile it and save it here. We have an error. Let's see, system. Okay, it's supposed to be system, not system. All right, so system.exit. I'm going to compile it and run. So I'm going to run this, and I'm going to enter. It's loading the G pane. I'm going to enter name 1 as Z, because we want this to arrange it in ascending order, right? So I'm going to enter Z, and then B, and then A. So I want to see A, B, Z. If it arranges it well, I want to see A, B, Z. So I'm going to say OK. And I see A, B, Z, but it's not displaying right. In other words, let me run this one more time. Let's enter random name. So okay, the question said what? If the user enters what? Charlie, Leslie, and Andy, it should basically display Andy, Charlie, Leslie. So let me bring this back. Where is it? Where's the G pane? Right here. Okay. So I'm going to enter Charlie first, Leslie, and Andy. And see, it says Andy, Charlie, Leslie, Andy, Charlie, Leslie, but we need to format it well. So anytime that it concatenates the string to the output variable, when it concatenates it, add a line break to it. Add a line break to it. So add a line break, concatenate the name, and concatenate another new line character. So I'm going to copy this whole thing here, and then do the same thing for all of them. When you concatenate the name, concatenate another new line character so that it displays nicely. Oops, this one too. So when you add the name, add a line break. Add a name, add a line break, so that each name is on each line. So that's what I'm doing here. Okay, so I'll compile it. Oops, what did I do? Okay. I'm going to compile it and then run it one more time. So the question said that if the user enters, let's say, Charlie first, Leslie first, and Leslie second, and Andy third, it should arrange it Andy first, Charlie second, and Leslie third. So Charlie, Leslie, and Andy. And it says Andy, Charlie, Leslie. It's arranging the names in alphabetical order, in ascending order, I guess. So A, C, and L. Let's try some more. So if I enter, let's say, Z first, I don't expect it to display Z first. So Z first, I'm going to enter C second and A third. I don't expect it to say Z, C, A. I expect it to arrange it in alphabetical order and say ACZ. So I'm going to hit OK, and it says ACZ. So it's working. It's arranging the names in a sorted manner. So this is chapter 3 wanted us to use our what we've learned in chapter from the beginning of the book to chapter 3 so far to create this program. It didn't want us to use any other advanced techniques. Not advanced techniques, but it didn't want us to use any other concepts taught in future chapters. That's chapter 4, chapter 5. It wanted us to just stick with if statement and switch statements and everything that we've learned in chapter 3 to create this program. So yes. So sure, there are other ways to write this program, but this is, with the tools that we have so far in chapter 3, this is one way of doing it. So as we move forward, I'm sure that with other things we learn, we can use those to even do it, maybe in a shorter or in an easier way, maybe, but this also works and this also gets the job done. All right, so we're done. If you have any questions, well, first of all, I hope you understood it. I really hope you understood it. And if you have any questions, please type them in the comment section, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time with the next program. All right, bye-bye and take care.